Long before satellites, algorithms, and modern science, ancient civilizations observed the world with an intensity that modern society often forgets. They watched the skies, measured the seasons, tracked the behavior of rivers, and recorded patterns that repeated across generations. To them, survival depended on attention. When something changed, it mattered. And when the change was dangerous, they warned those who came after them. Across continents and centuries, ancient societies left behind messages that were not celebratory or triumphant, but cautionary. These were not myths meant only to entertain, nor religious texts designed solely to inspire devotion. They were warnings, observations of collapse, imbalance, and consequence, etched into stone, encoded into oral tradition, and preserved in fragile manuscripts. Yet again and again, those warnings were ignored. In Mesopotamia, some of the earliest written records describe cycles of abundance followed by ruin. Clay tablets speak of fertile lands turning to dust, of rivers that once sustained life becoming sources of destruction. These texts describe leaders who overextended their reach, exploited the land beyond its limits, and dismissed the signs of decline until it was too late. The language is not poetic exaggeration. It is practical, almost weary, as though written by people who had already lived through disaster and were desperate not to see it repeated. In the ancient Indus Valley, cities were designed with sophisticated drainage systems and careful urban planning, suggesting an acute awareness of environmental risk. Yet even there, archaeological evidence shows a gradual failure to respond to shifting climate patterns. Rivers changed course. Floods became unpredictable. Agricultural yields declined. The systems that once protected the population became insufficient, and the civilization slowly dissolved. What remains are signs that they understood the danger, but could not adapt quickly enough to survive it. The Maya civilization, often remembered for its achievements in astronomy and architecture, also left behind stark warnings. Inscriptions and glyphs record periods of prolonged drought, social unrest, and political fragmentation. The Maya tracked celestial cycles with precision, yet even with their advanced knowledge, they struggled to escape the consequences of environmental stress, combined with internal power struggles. Their cities were eventually abandoned, reclaimed by jungle, their warnings swallowed by vegetation until rediscovered centuries later. Ancient Egypt, a civilization defined by stability and continuity, also documented imbalance. Texts speak of times when the Nile failed to flood, when social order weakened, and when moral decay was believed to invite catastrophe. The Egyptians believed harmony between people, nature, and the divine was essential for survival. When that harmony broke, collapse followed. Their warnings were philosophical as much as practical. Greed, corruption, and disregard for balance were seen as existential threats. What unites these civilizations is not ignorance, but awareness. They noticed patterns. They understood limits. They recognized that prosperity could not be endless, and that systems, whether ecological or social, could fail. Their warnings were not abstract predictions. They were grounded in lived experience. And yet, humanity repeatedly chose not to listen. As civilizations rose, they often inherited fragments of knowledge from those that came before. But instead of absorbing the warnings, they focused on the achievements. Architecture was admired. Technology was replicated. Power structures were imitated. The lessons about restraint, humility, and balance were far easier to ignore. There is a reason warnings are unpopular. They demand sacrifice. They require change. They challenge the belief that progress is permanent and that growth can continue without consequence. Ancient warnings did not promise comfort. They offered survival, but at a cost. In many cases, these warnings were deliberately reframed as myths. Stories of floods became legends. Accounts of collapse were turned into moral tales, stripped of their practical urgency. By transforming warnings into symbolism, later societies distanced themselves from responsibility. What was once instruction became entertainment. Over time, written warnings were lost, destroyed, or dismissed as irrelevant to new eras. New technologies created the illusion that old limits no longer applied. Control over nature was assumed. Risk was underestimated. The same patterns that ancient civilizations documented began to repeat, often on a larger scale. What makes this history unsettling is how familiar it feels. Environmental strain, resource depletion, social inequality, and centralized power are not relics of the past. They are present realities. Ancient societies warned that these forces, when left unchecked, lead to collapse. Not always suddenly, often slowly, quietly, until recovery becomes impossible. Some warnings were explicit. Others were embedded in ritual and tradition. Sacred laws restricted exploitation of land. Seasonal pauses were enforced to allow recovery. Social systems emphasized redistribution during times of abundance. These were not arbitrary customs. They were survival mechanisms. When those mechanisms failed, when leaders exempted themselves, when expansion replaced restraint, the consequences followed with grim consistency. Collapse did not arrive as a single dramatic moment. It unfolded through famine, unrest, migration, and loss of cohesion. By the time the end was visible, it was already irreversible. Modern society often assumes that ancient collapses were inevitable due to lack of technology. But the evidence suggests something more troubling. Many ancient societies saw collapse coming. They named it. They described it. And still, they could not prevent it, either because they lacked the power to change course or because those in power refused to listen. Warnings are only effective when action follows. Today, fragments of these ancient messages survive in museums, libraries, and ruins. They are studied academically, often stripped of urgency, and framed as historical curiosity. Yet their relevance has not diminished. If anything, it has intensified. The greatest tragedy is not that ancient civilizations collapsed. It is that they tried to warn us, and we chose to treat their experience as distant and irrelevant. We admire their ruins while repeating their mistakes. We decode their languages while ignoring their lessons. History does not repeat itself because it must. It repeats because patterns go unrecognized or are recognized too late. Ancient warnings were not prophecies. They were instructions written by those who had already paid the price of ignoring them. The question is not whether ancient civilizations understood collapse. They did. The question is whether modern civilization is willing to acknowledge that understanding and act on it, because the warnings are still there, carved into stone, written in ash, buried beneath cities, waiting to be heard. Subscribe to this channel for more.